So what is your initial investment to, because I hear three different lawyers, copyright, trademark, contract,
Yeah.
and mark, logo branding. So what is the initial investment that you put in to get things started? And did you realize the cost that comes with starting a business?
You know how you know it's going to be hard, but it
Hmm.
ends up being even harder than you thought, you know? So it's not like I went in with rose-colored glasses, completely not thinking, oh, all is well in the world. I'm going to make a profit in the first year. La la la. You know, it's not like I was thinking that, but it definitely was really really tough. I Let me see. I think you and I talked about this before, but I think on average it cost maybe around 1,500 per month for me, expenses wise, plus or minus, for me
Hmm.
to be able to keep my business afloat. So the first year was definitely a lot of what they call paid in capital, you know, so it's like me using my own money and then investing it into my business in order for it to work. So I definitely did not make a profit my first year.
Do you get a chance to pay yourself? Because I think that's was one thing that um, you're
Yeah,
able to, yeah.
good question. First year, no, no. But actually, you know, I think this is a good time for me to recommend a book that I encourage people who are interested in starting their business to read. It's called Profit First. It was something my husband introduced to me actually, and it actually, I mean, I know the name sounds horrible, like, oh, all I think about is profit. It's actually not that. It's actually, this book is one of the reasons why I think I have slightly better work-life alignment than I did at the beginning of my business, because it makes sure that you always make sure you pay yourself, you know, a little bit, and you always make sure you put some away for profit, you know, and somehow it works out because people think that, oh gosh, I can't pay myself. I have all this debt and I have all this expenses. So, but actually you can still pay yourself, you know, and in some ways if you think about it, it actually makes you more aware of your money. And I know it sounds weird, but I was able to start having like an Excel sheet, and I broke everything down like percentages of where I want things to go. And I think that's it. You kind of have like little buckets. If you read the book, it'll tell you, it's like you have little buckets for everything: expense bucket, payroll bucket, you know, all these buckets. And you try and make sure they don't like commingle, you know, and how instead of like doing it per dollar, I actually think of it more in percentages, and it actually doesn't stress me out as much by thinking things in percentages. And the only thing I think about in per dollar is, of course, the expenses I have for the month. I need to make sure to be able to cover that, but it doesn't mean I can't pay myself. And I guess one thing that's important, though, since we're kind of talking about finances, is if you can slowly try to work up to, at first, 6 months worth of savings for your business, you know, and then if you can try to continue to work up to a year, or and then 18 months, because as you can see with this outbreak, a lot of businesses actually don't have a savings account, you know. If they had that 6 months to a year, it actually might have not been as bad for them, but not everybody has that.
Right. And having
Yeah.
that luxury, or I guess it's not a luxury, it's a necessity, but to some folks it's a luxury. But now
Mhm.
with this situation, they realize it is a necessity. And I mean, just for not for business, right? Even for personal,
Yeah.
3 to 6 month expenses that you have to cover, just something never emergency happens, and it happens when it happens. You can't say, I'm gonna wait and this emergency happened. No, right? So same principle applies for business from that standpoint.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting. At first when I approached the business, I was thinking from a like, you know, I have to manage my business differently from personal. But how I was able to start succeeding, or, you know, have less stress financially, was actually treating it as I treat my personal. Because I've always been pretty successful at managing my personal money, you know, then of course, other than student loans, but we're paying that off as we go, right? You know what I mean? But then, like, but yeah, but once I started treating it more like my personal, it worked out. You know, the only thing is I had to keep track of things more, and that I have bookkeeping, you know, to be able to make sure everything balance out, to create my profit and loss statements and stuff like that. But Yeah, I
So
agree.
for those that don't know how you treat your money, personal versus professional in terms of business, like what are some resources and tools and tips that you would, three things you would recommend from that standpoint in managing the business of the business?
I see. So I think first off, I actually have two checking accounts for my business, which is actually kind of what I have for my personal, honestly. And then I also have two savings account for my business. So like one savings account is for your profit, and one savings account is for your taxes. And the profit one can also be retained earnings too.
Mm,
And then one checking account is where, any revenue comes in. And that's also where I pay out my expenses. And then one checking account is for payroll.
mm.
So, but everyone's different. Just to let you know, if you read the Profit First book that I was mentioning, he organizes it differently than I do. I kind of took what he did and I slightly modified it to make it into my own. And I think, that's the thing. When you get advice from a lot of people and you start a business, some people are going to make you feel really bad. Don't, don't take it to heart. Or some people will tell you that you're doing something wrong. What I would like to suggest to everyone is just keep an open mind. Definitely hear them out. If it doesn't work for you, don't feel like you're actually being mean that you're not listening to them, because they don't know everything that you do. They don't own the same business you do. But at the same time, if you notice part of it makes sense, then somehow tweak it into, what works for you, how your brain works, how it clicks for you. Don't try to reinvent the wheel and it's gonna like, be too hard for you to maintain. So that would definitely be a tip I would give too.
Yeah, and that's a really good tip. And again, kind of from a even a personal standpoint, right? Like, no, you're unique and your business is unique. And so you have to be able to tailor, modify, and do what's best for you and best for your business. Because what works for one person may not work for you, and what works for you may not work for the other person. So being able to be more open-minded from that standpoint. And I think
Yeah.
that opens up a lot of
Yeah,
people.
and since you have manager experience and I do too, I realize that's something I wish someone would have told me earlier on. All the advice he or she wants, and you should take it the same way that almost the exact same tip that I gave for running your business. That's how you should take for management or leadership style, I guess I like that word better, leadership style. Take what's good from what they say, tweak it into your own. Just because it's worked for them doesn't mean it works for you. So, you know, yeah, don't try to completely change your style.
Exactly. And you got to do you, right? You're
Yeah.
from that standpoint. Okay. Next, I would like to ask more about the focus on the business yourself. Like, how did you start marketing to individuals, and what success have you seen with your marketing strategy?
Yeah, sure. So at first, when I was marketing, I actually made some infographics, so like, your long little sheet of paper. And, it just has my services in there and things like that. And I also use social media. My marketing friend tells me that I should try to post regularly on social media about some services and things like that. And believe it or not, at first, I actually Uber. I was an Uber pharmacist. So I actually put all of my marketing materials on the back of my seat and I just drove around town, and I don't try to like push it in people's faces when they get in my car, but if they look and they ask, and I start talking about it, and sometimes it's interesting. They might not be interested, but then they introduce you to people. Again, it's just a way to network, and then they introduce you to people who might be interested, or they introduce you to someone they think can benefit. How can I say this? They introduce you to a clinic,
Mm-hmm.
and then that clinic have patients
Mm-hmm.
who might benefit from your service. So that's kind of how I started out.
I love it. I think that's really creative. I don't think you'll ever, or at least I didn't even think of something like that. So that's very clever because Uber, you make money and you have some marketing right there and you have captive audience because whatever whatever how long they're in your car, they're forced to kind of read or be on the phone. But most likely folks look up at least once while they're in your car, right? And making the
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah.
How
But
long
like
would
I
you
said, I
do?
try not
Yeah.
to make them upset though. It depends on if they ask. If they don't ask, I don't try to push it. Yeah.
So, how long were you doing that? And then what success? How do you define success in your business?
Um, so for the first year was really hard on me. I actually felt very unsuccessful my first year. True story. Like tears were sometimes happen the first year, wondering why I'm doing this to myself. Um, but I think for me, I'm starting to realize success doesn't always mean money. It's doing something you love and you're happy, right? You know, I mean, I am actually more profitable, like every year my business is heading towards the right direction, but it's not a race, for me. And because remember, for me, I'm not, everyone's different. I'm not going to rule out maybe this being bigger than it currently is right now. But because remember, I don't like to close the doors. I like to keep things open. But for me, the reason why I started this was for the flexibility to be able to travel, to spend more time with my husband, things like that. Because when I was managing my pharmacy, according to my husband, the physician, he said I was too busy for him. There's something wrong when your doctor husband is complaining about the pharmacist schedule. So
Of you being too busy for him. Yes.
yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I feel successful right now, but for me, success is my business is heading towards the right direction. I'm not going to put numbers on it. I know that's different from probably what most people in business will tell you. I'm kind of different that way. And then second, am I happy? I'm happy. Um, am I able to take care of my bills? I am, personal and business. Am I able to do hobbies outside of work? I am. To me, that's success. Done. Yeah.
Awesome. I love that. I think that's, more business owners slash leaders need to define it more that way. I think we're ingrained, you did the executive MBA, I did the master's in administration. So we're ingrained in terms like metrics, data, numbers, and, you know, more from that to quote success and outcomes. But I really, with the show and with this, the reason for this channel is really trying to promote people to live a meaningful life. And I love how you define success not by numbers, but by what you perceive as success and going back to your why, which is more flexibility, be able to spend more time with your husband, be able to help other people, right?
Mhm.
So I think that's great. Those are really good goals as well as outcomes that matters to you because that's what it is, right? In the end,
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
you're heading towards, like you say, even from a number standpoint, it looks like you're going the right direction. And one book I would recommend to our audience to look. This is not a business book, but I feel like it can be business and can be personal. Is Simon Sinek, and he write a book on focus on why. So really, he talks about his golden cycle of the what, the why, and the what, the how, and the why. And most business focus on the what and the how, but they don't focus on the why. Like, what is your why? Like, why are you doing this, right? And I think you really focus on the why, and then it just transparent into how and what.
Yeah, I like how you summarize that. That's really good. I think initially when I started my business, remember when I was in tears the first year, it was definitely the opposite of that. But then I realized I was not healthy. I was even in worse shape than when I was managing the independent pharmacy where I didn't have a life either. So I realized a change had to be made. And part of sometimes that change is your mindset, and then everything kind of follows from there. Like you said, I definitely still run reports. I see where I can trim down expenses and things like that. But, and I run numbers that's how I know I'm going in the right direction. But in the end, it's definitely you decide how to, no one affects your happiness. You decide to be happy, right? It's your decision. So,
Yeah.
why let anybody else or anything else affect you? You shouldn't be dependent on anybody else or anything else for your happiness. It's all you.
Right. People don't make you angry. You make yourself angry. You react to that.
Exactly.
So that's kind of the same thing in terms of happiness.
Yeah.
So no, that's awesome. Like I love that you said it that way from your business standpoint. That's the same thing here with, when I find coaching coins, it's really focusing on both career and finance, and I want to help people to live a meaningful life. And career and finance are the tips I can share, and bringing great speakers and just share their thoughts and insights like you do. I want to, before